Hi everyone, I'm David Fisher and this is Presidential Chronicles, the series of books and videos on American history as seen through the lives of the presidents of the United States. This episode is from the life of John Quincy Adams, and the focus is minister. The year is 1791. Adams, 24 years old. He's graduated from Harvard. He'd studied the law, passed the bar. He's now a practicing attorney, and he is miserable. He doesn't like the law. He doesn't like this career, which he sees kind of as a dead end. He craves public service. He wants to be involved in what's going on in his community, in his nation, kind of like his father, who was recently elected vice president of the new United States of America. Well, there's a lot going on in his own country and a lot going on in the world, and John Quincy Adams has opinions, like about what's going on in France with the French Revolution. Now, John Quincy Adams had spent a lot of time in Europe in his youth, and he has strong opinions about this chaotic and bloody revolution that frankly abhorred him, that he was very strongly against what was going on in France. And that nature of being appalled actually took on a whole new level when France sent a new minister to the United States by the name of Edmond Genet. And Genet's charge was to get the Americans to support the French effort. The problem was that President George Washington had already proclaimed neutrality for the United States. That was the position for the Americans, is we're not going to get involved in the European wars or the French Revolution. We're going to have trade with these countries if we can, but we're going to abstain militarily. Well, Genet tried to go over the head of the President of the United States, appealing directly to the American people for support, and this was appalling to John Quincy Adams, who said, "Perish the American whose prostituted heart could forsake the genuine purity of our national worship and offer at a foreign shrine the tribute of his slavish in the adoration." John Quincy Adams, pro-American, pro-President Washington, pro-position of neutrality. He also realized, though, that this was very unpopular in large pockets of the United States. And to be willing to speak out against Genet and against the Francophiles who were supporting France could actually impact his own standing in the community. That's the Adams work ethic. He couldn't care less. He said, "I have no predilection for unpopularity as such, but I hold it much preferable to the popularity of a day which perishes with the transient topic upon which is grounded. I'm going to stick to my independent principles. Popular or not, those are the right things to do, and that's the position I'm going to pursue." Well, some people did take notice for some of Adams's public statements along these lines, including the George Washington administration, who decided to welcome John Quincy Adams into the public service with an offer of a ministership to go to the Netherlands to be the Americans' first minister to The Hague. And John Quincy Adams takes up this assignment. He brings his brother Tom along with him. He's 27 years old and beginning his first official job in the service of his country. John Quincy had spent a lot of time in Europe, but it's been about a decade since he is there, and a lot has changed. The wars between Britain and France having a devastating impact not just on themselves, but in the neighboring countries, as did the French Revolution in the Netherlands, were not what really John Quincy Adams remembered, and not in a good way. He said, "The most sanguine patriot can discover in the future destiny of this country nothing but subjection, aggravated by the recollection of former glories and wretchedness, embittered by the memory of its former opulence." You could see even he was longing for better days from the past for the Netherlands for what he found in his present assignment. Most of the foreign policy of the United States at the time really was focused on Great Britain and France, not the Netherlands. But John Quincy Adams was very useful. A lot of his communiques were giving the sentiment of what's happening in Europe a different perspective to the Washington administration. And his father, the vice president, wrote him and said, "I have no language to express to you the pleasure I have received from the satisfaction you have given to the President and the Secretary of State, as well as from the clear, comprehensive, and masterly accounts in your letters to me of the public affairs of nations in Europe." Seemed like he was doing a pretty good job as a minister in his first real job in the service to his country. It certainly, of course, would not be the last. The question is, would it continue the following year? That was an election year. 1796, George Washington steps down. The new president, John Adams. Well, nepotism was a big deal at the time. Would he continue to have his son in employment? And the odds were most likely not. What changed things? Well, there's really only one person could have changed this dynamic, and it happened to be the father of the country, George Washington. Washington wrote John Adams and said, "If my wishes would be of any avail, they should go to you in a strong hope that you will not withhold merited promotion from John Q. Adams because he is your son. I give it as my decided opinion that Mr. Adams is the most valuable public character we have abroad. His country would sustain a loss if these were to be checked by over-delicacy on your part." Talk about a letter of recommendation. Not bad coming from George Washington, and John Adams and John Quincy Adams agreed, nepotism aside. If it's good enough for the father of the country and he can be of service, he would continue, and he would as the minister to Portugal, which was the assignment his father was going to give him. In the meantime, John Quincy Adams had a social life, and it started really to blossom in the household of Joshua Johnson, who was a wealthy businessman based in Europe, who had 6 daughters, including a 21-year-old by the name of Louisa. Louisa and John Quincy Adams started spending a lot of time together, and actually they were seeing each other for several months, and people were starting to wonder, where is this going? What are the intentions of John Quincy Adams? And he was kind of balking a little. Did he want to ask for her hand in marriage? Was he going to move on to someone else? Well, eventually he did propose, and Louisa accepted. They were not going to get married yet. He first had to go back to the Netherlands to do some business, and this actually created some friction because he was gone weeks and weeks, and it didn't seem to be ending, and Louisa was upset. She was frustrated, and she was expressing that to John Quincy Adams, who took the moment to write her a letter to basically instruct her that is not the way we in the Adams family behave. He wrote to his fiancée, "For your own happiness, endeavor to acquire the faculty not merely of acquiescence in unavoidable inconveniences, but even of a cheerful conformity to things which must be endured. And above all, establish as an invariable rule for your conversation to express no general or national reflections." This was sort of rebuking her before their marriage to say, look, you do the best you can, even if you don't like it, kind of suck it up and get along with the program. That's the way we do things in the Adams family. Well, this was a warning signal. They probably should have called it off. The fact is, Louisa and John Quincy Adams were completely incompatible. Different backgrounds, different things of importance. This wasn't like James and Dolly Madison, who were very, very different, but very compatible in their relationships. They complemented each other. That was not the case with Louisa and John Quincy Adams, and yet they do decide to get married. They're married for 50 years, but it was mostly unhappy between the two of them. That wedding took place July 26, 1797 at the All Hallows by the Tower Parish Church in London. Brother Tom was the only family member who was there, and again, things did not get off to a good start. In part because John Adams, the president, reassigned his son not to go to Portugal, but to go to Prussia. And Louisa was like, look, I don't know anybody in Prussia. I don't speak the language. This is going to be bad for me. Plus, I'm finding out that my new husband is really frugal and I'm used to lavish spending. And then the other shoe dropped. She found out that her father, who she cherished, Joshua Johnson, was basically a fraud. And his creditors were pouncing, and he had to flee to the United States to sort of escape imprisonment. This is not an easy time for Louisa Adams. Well, President John Adams, his focus was largely on Europe, in particular what was happening in France. France and Britain were at war. The French were attacking American ships with impunity, the ships that were trying to do trade with the British, and there was a cries for war in the United States against the France. And John Adams was ready to prepare for war, but he also wanted to try negotiations. Unfortunately, his initial envoy was not received by the French. And then when he sent a commission to meet, they said, sure, we'll meet with you, but you got to pay us a base tribute, a bribe before we meet with you. And the Americans balked at this. It created a big hullabaloo back in the United States where, again, people were clamoring for war based on this dramatic insult to the American country. Well, John Quincy Adams in the nearby countries was watching this and continued to provide insight to his father through these diplomatic channels. And he believed in 1798 that the French would receive an American minister and had another chance for negotiations. He wrote to his father that in proportion as our spirit of resistance has become manifest, theirs of oppression and extortion has shrunk back. They might be willing to meet. And so John Adams, the president, comes to a critical moment at the end of 1798. Is he going to ask for a declaration of war, or is he going to pursue peace one more time? The easy answer was war. That was the popular choice. It probably would have guaranteed his re-election. But John Adams, selfless, not about himself, he was about his community, his country. He fervently believed peace was possible, negotiation was the path, and so he surprised Congress in a speech where he said, I'm going to send a new minister. Well, this fractured the Federalist Party. The High Federalists withdrew their support. Adams lost his re-election, and he ended up then going off into the distance, but with a very fond note from his son, John Quincy, who said, about that loss, in your retirement, you will have not only the consolation that you have discharged all the duties of a virtuous citizen, but the genuine pleasure of reflecting that by the wisdom and firmness of your administration, you left the country in safe and honorable peace. In resisting the violence of France, you saved the honor of the American name from disgrace. This was the Adams Creed. John and John Quincy both subscribed to. They did the right thing. In this case, his father did the right thing, even though it hurt him personally. His son, John Quincy, could not have been more proud. Well, a new administration was coming in, so John Adams decided to recall his son after the 5 years he has spent abroad. He came back with his bride and also their son, George Washington Adams. They brought home to meet now the ex-president and his mother, Abigail. And Abigail and Louisa didn't get along. John Adams actually really liked Louisa. He thought her socialite and gossip was sort of intriguing, almost a guilty pleasure, and they had a really good relationship, but Louisa and Abigail never really got along. But more importantly, this is 1801, another point of inflection for John Quincy Adams. Where is he going to go next? He's highly accomplished. He's in his early 30s. What's next? That's the story for another day. That is John Quincy Adams, and Minister, from the life of John Quincy Adams. For more Presidential Chronicles, check out my books on Amazon.com. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm David Fisher, and this is Presidential Chronicles.